Now, let's get straight down to business. Joe Biden and the Democrats think they are on a real winner with this whole thing where they declare, in the manner of Joseph Stalin, that anyone to their right is a fascist. But I tell you what, after watching the president's bizarre speech in Pennsylvania Friday, I think old Joe better look in the mirror. I mean, how can someone give a speech all lit up in red and black, flanked by U.S. Marines, where they look like the bad guy in a Netflix mashup of House of Cards and a adult diaper commercial, and say the other side are the extremists? I mean, honestly, it looked like some sort of bizarre triumph of the will. But I tell you what, the 20-minute version of George Orwell's 2-minute hate Biden went on the other night was so bizarre, so divisive, and such an exercise in gaslighting that if you attached a pipeline to it, the whole thing could have solved Europe's energy crisis. This speech was demagogic, ugly, and calculated to foment dissent within America and push a fraying society closer to open conflict. I mean, right there, on national TV, Joe Biden demonized tens of millions of Americans as being the forces of darkness, the enemy of the state, and beyond the pale. Is this really the guy who was supposed to bring Americans together in 2020? I don't think so. Here's a taste.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Well, there's a lot that's not normal about Joe Biden, that's for sure. But yes, he did say basically millions of his fellow Americans are the enemy, with a blood-red backdrop, and again, flanked by those U.S. Marines dragged into this political stunt. A stunt-like bit of imagery that even someone on CNN said was too political. Yes, Mr. President, these are perfectly normal areas that you're in. There was more.
Now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
Not in the light of truth, but the shadow of lies. I mean, this is dark stuff. This is Manichaean politics of the worst sort. And in Joe Biden's increasingly Swiss cheese-like frontal cortex, he sees the whole problem in America as MAGA Republicans fomenting division, while he and the Democrats choose the sunny side of the street. Do go on, Mr. President.
But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place where it all began to speak as plainly as I can to the nation.
Yes, again, at the birthplace of America, Independence Hall, Joe Biden tried to bring the nation together by accusing millions of his fellow countrymen of being violent traitors. Sigmund Freud himself wouldn't have known what to do with such a case of projection. Far from being the party of peace, love, and mung beans, though, let's remember, the left has a long history of weaponizing violence against its enemies in America. Think about the BLM riots, or the mostly peaceful protests that broke out after the murder of George Floyd, or the Antifa protests in Seattle and Portland that included sieges on courthouses and police stations and the temporary secession of whole neighborhoods from the United States. Gosh, I don't know. That sounds a little insurrectionary, if you know what I mean. At least no one was wearing any Viking hats there. And then, of course, the Republicans and Trump officials who have been harassed in public even while eating in restaurants, all for having different beliefs. Again, very unifying and peaceful to be sure, though it is in keeping with what Joe Biden's old boss, Barack Obama, gave his advice to, well...
Whether they're independent or whether they are Republican, I want you to argue with them and get in their face.
Yeah, get in their face. And speaking of getting in people's faces, the left had no problem with taking their protests right up to the steps of the Supreme Court to prevent Justice Brett Kavanaugh from being sworn in, or protesting in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices when a leaked draft decision came out revealing that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, despite these protests very possibly being in violation of federal law designed to prevent officials from being intimidated by a mob. And of course, it also led to an assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh. But forget all that, because Joe Biden tells us that it is the left that is on the side of the angels. So what does it matter what the law says, right? And of course, again, if someone tries to kill a Supreme Court justice, well, them's the breaks, right? So I'm sorry, Mr. Biden, spare me the lecture that somehow it is the right that is tearing America apart or encouraging violence. Frankly, I think your side of politics has a lot to answer for on that score, and I suspect the American people will see through it pretty well come November.